So, liberation is the topic today. And, I started a video a second ago, and I begun on this topic, and realized after like 15 seconds I didn't really know exactly where I wanted to go in terms of introducing the topic. And I realized me doing that, me stopping and restarting, was kind of an ironic introduction that,
Like my style? Hit the subscribe button so you don't miss any future videos.
played into what I actually want to say anyways, which is that, this idea of liberation, it is fleeting. A lot of people chase this idea of being, awoke or awakened, so to speak, and outside of society's grasp, or, you know, unplugged from the matrix. That's probably the best metaphor that people use. And there is definitely some truth in kind of being away from the majority in some capacity, especially when that majority is pretty consistently associated with things that seem to repress and kind of hold back the soul on an individual level and even on a larger humanistic level. And so you have different layers to this idea, of course, being personal liberation coming from a much more intrinsic or internal battle with the self, and liberation from one's circumstances, which we could probably call man versus society, perhaps even society versus society if you look at individuals as kind of smaller forms of society in of themselves. So I'm not here to outline every single layer to that discussion, but rather to kind of point to some simpler forms of liberation that I think people often gloss over. And one of them that immediately comes to mind after, the little conundrum at the beginning, was that I was overly concerned with how I would be perceived when I started that video, and I didn't know what to say right away, which, is a bit abnormal for me. I thought that maybe it might appear like, oh, he doesn't know what he's talking about, or, he doesn't feel confident. And I think the truth was, I just literally didn't know how to dive into the topic. But because I'm so worried about my image, my outward exposition, I'm kind of preventing myself from fully diving in or fully investigating whatever thoughts I could have. And maybe if I would have waited just 10 more seconds, they would have come to me. But because I'm, needing to appeal to some sort of audience metric of, fast relatability, meaning I need to be able to relate to those audience members within 10 to 15 seconds, or else their attention span's already been busted, then it's difficult to, move on past that stage. So that's kind of the first thing that comes to mind. You can easily be stuck on what people's impression of you is, and that can influence your decisions, that can influence your words, how you carry yourself, your body movements, body language, so many things. And once you're past that to an extent, or once you begin to grow, in a direction that moves past it, you will feel a sense of liberation, because you're no longer bound by kind of the weight of public perception, of opinion, and you do ultimately kind of move in a direction that you could ostensibly call freedom. So I think I'm going to do a part 2 to this because I kind of like how this is going so far. So I'm going to outline probably one more method that we can use to kind of, produce some sort of quasi-liberation in ourselves, at least at a base level. And then I think I'm going to continue on in another video because I don't want this to run too long. But yeah, that being said, so number 2 is kind of about listening to only your purest thoughts. So a lot of thoughts come through our minds, and this is more internal than anything. A lot of thoughts come through our minds, a lot of, reactions, emotional states come and go, and they are valid. They are certainly a natural phenomenon. They're organic in the sense that, we didn't choose to have them. But what you have to be careful of is kind of giving in too much to those and allowing those to completely control how you live your life. And so you could call that kind of controlling your emotions or not being so emotional, whatever. It's not meaning that you need to be a robot, but it's kind of like, you've heard before from philosophers that you can't, or in Stoicism, right, you can't let your emotions kind of overtake your sense of self and that sense of direction, because they can kind of produce a completely different version of you, even outside of the ego. The emotions can kind of create kind of this almost armor around the ego that is very difficult to pierce from the inner mind, and even your sense of navigation can be completely messed up, if you are too out of balance, out of sync with yourself. So you have to find a way to kind of meditate through those thoughts, and especially if they're negative, you can't let them become the dominant force that drives you, or else you're really going to be bound by your emotions. And being stuck in an emotional state is very akin to a child. And we could say in many ways, from that perspective, children aren't liberated, at least emotionally, from the sense that they are completely free of the influence or control of them. And that being said, it's not like you could ever, fully isolate emotions as, a singularity in yourself and kind of separate or detach them from who you are as a person, because they're so integrated at the same time. It's just being able to see them pass through your mind and watch them, observe them, feel them, but not let them become kind of overbearing or dominant. So I think I'm going to continue, as I mentioned, with a part 2. So would love to hear your thoughts. If you vibe with this, if you connect, resonate, then let me hear. Stay tuned for the next edition, and I'll see you soon. Peace.